तो देख बिना ब्रेक।
Download Tak app.
With the first Indian origin Home Secretary ever in the UK, Right Honourable Priti Patel, just few days before election. Thank you very much for your time, ma'am. On this election, you must be really busy, but you're looking extremely pretty.
Well, thank you very much, Lavina. It's a privilege to be here, and of course we're at Nisa Monday this evening on a very auspicious occasion on the 98th birth anniversary of Pramukh Swami. So it's a real privilege to be here. And of course we do have a general election taking place. We've got a few more days to go. It's an important time for our country. It's an important time for us. You spoke to the Prime Minister earlier on this evening. We want to get Brexit done as a party. We want to get a Conservative majority government in this election, and that means great things for us once we can get Brexit done, and particularly for the UK-India relationship. And of course, as someone that has worked assiduously in building those ties as a former diaspora champion, now as Home Secretary, I'm determined to support Boris Johnson as Prime Minister to make sure that we get the big job done after this election, but then we can actually break free in the world and strengthen our ties bilaterally with many other countries, including India.
Yeah, and that's my second question. At PA, you really campaigned during the Leave campaign. I remember I have interviewed you several times. You said then, today, Prime Minister said, you said then, and Prime Minister said today, that there will be equal rules between EEA and in India. You have changed the post-study visa. Two questions. Will that be extended or remain the way it is? Because that's the question that comes from the students. And also, how are you going to make the two countries at par?
Yes, so I think it's important to say we've already announced some important visa changes. So post-study visa is one option, and there are other things that we've done. So we are fast-tracking and prioritising scientists and researchers, people that can come to our country and contribute. We've also announced a fast-track visa for people that want to come into the NHS as well. Doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals, and they will be sponsored, by the way, through the NHS, and they will get a visa in 2 weeks. So that's a really quick thing that we've done, and I think it speaks volumes about what we want to achieve once we leave the European Union in terms of immigration to the United Kingdom. We want people of skills that are going to come here and contribute, and that'll benefit, of course, countries outside of the EU who have been discriminated against because of our policy through EU membership, where we have free movement. Free movement will end with the European Union, and that means all countries will be on a level playing field. They'll all be equal in terms of how they are treated. So for India in particular, we know that our Indians community in particular, those with skills and businesses, they want to come and they want to come invest in the UK. That will continue, but of course we will have a policy of fairness that will actually facilitate that, enable that. And it's all about the brightest and the best, the people that are educated, the people with the right skills that can come and work, yes, in the private sector, contribute to our public sector, but importantly, contribute to the United Kingdom.
Please tell me about that fast-track NHS visa that you were talking about.
So I announced the fast-track NHS visa 4 weeks ago during the general election campaign, and that's one of the first things that we will do. It's a fact that we need more professional people across our brilliant NHS. Our NHS is growing across the country. We've already announced that we are investing £39 billion more in the NHS, and that we'll have more doctors, more nurses, there'll be more GP appointments. But to make that happen, we need people to come and work in the NHS. So I have announced a fast-track NHS visa where people who are qualified, so nurses, doctors and healthcare professionals, can be sponsored by the NHS, by a hospital, by a clinical commissioning group in the UK to come to the UK to work in the NHS. That's the 2-week visa that we will turn around, providing they have the sponsorship here in the United Kingdom from the NHS. And that'll be a great thing, where we'll have more people from abroad coming to work and support our great NHS and our public services.
Indian issues have mattered a lot in this election. Can you please tell me, what is the anti-India forces that Prime Minister was referring to? You, as a Home Secretary, have to deal with a lot of activities that have been anti-India in front of the High Commission.
Well, my views are very clear on this. Anything that is anti another country or another race or religion is simply unacceptable. And that's across the board, full stop. And it is true, we have seen, sadly, we have seen protests and demonstrations and hostility towards the Indian community. That is unacceptable. My views are well known on that, but we shouldn't tolerate that at all. And I think the way in which we continue to, show respect to each other, respect to each other's community, is not by being political about these issues, but actually by supporting communities and working together with communities across the country. As Home Secretary, that is something that I do. I meet with all leaders of all faiths, all communities, Sikh community, Muslim community, Jewish community, many other communities as well. And of course, we live in a fantastic country, a tolerant society, and that's effectively what we stand for and what we absolutely support, as not just Conservatives, but as people that want to see communities of all faiths and ethnicity flourish in the United Kingdom.
Before I let you give your message, personal message to the people or our viewers, I want to ask, terror is a huge issue. We have had to see one right on our streets and by London Bridge, and that was thanks to the people being, or the convicts being released halfway through, and you've mentioned that on your Twitter as well.
Yes.
Are you looking to do something about that if you come
We're
back?
doing more than just looking, we are acting upon that. And so you would have heard the Prime Minister and myself speak about this over the last week. The Conservative Party and a Conservative Party in government will end the automatic early release of prisoners, serious and violent offenders, but also those that participate in terrorist activities. It is a shocking stain that we have seen and witnessed what we have, but it's a failure of our criminal justice system as well, that because of old legislation under a previous government, under the Labour administration, that serious offenders, and as in this case, terrorist offences, have been able to be automatically released from prison halfway through their sentence, and that is effectively what we want to end, and we will end. But on top of that as well, there is a message to the British public that only the Conservative Party is a party of law and order. That means more police officers on the streets, 20,000 more police officers, but also a criminal justice system that will work for the public. I've already, as Home Secretary, been working with the Lord Chancellor to look at sentencing guidelines. That is something that we will continue going forward, and when we get a Conservative majority government, we will legislate for that as well, to make sure that people that commit the most awful acts of harm, terror and violence are kept in prison, serve their full sentences, and that's effectively what the British public would expect and see under a Conservative government.
That's very last promise. Last question. Will you support the apology to Jallianwala?
Well, look, for me right now, my only focus is to win the general election and get a Conservative majority. Thank you.